Okay, alright.
Hello and welcome back to Create with Chidex. I'm Chidima, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how I made a bar soap, a sponge, and a foot scrub brush out of cake and other edible ingredients. This is the perfect illusion cake, and I guarantee you that if you serve this up to your friends and your family, you will successfully prank them. They will be wowed and they will have a good laugh. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe. And also hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post new content. Join me and let's have fun making this cake. Just like you would see in a bathroom, I'm going to create that luxurious looking tiled surface for my board. So I'm doing this by mixing in a few drops of edible black gel color into some white fondant and then marbling it. I'm going to make sure that I don't mix in the black completely so that I'll have that marbled effect. After marbling it, I'll roll it out on my cake board and trim it to size. The next item I'll make for this cake is the soap dish, which I'm going to make from grey modeling chocolate to match the grey tile effects of the cake board. So I rolled out the modeling chocolate and imprinted the shape of two rectangles on it, using two rectangular objects with rounded corners. In this case, I used the lid of a plate of butter for the larger rectangle and a tin of sardine for the smaller rectangle. But you can use items that roughly fit these shapes and sizes. After getting the rectangular prints on, using an X-Acto knife, I'm going to trim the modeling chocolate around the large rectangular print. Then I'll start pressing down the modeling chocolate just within the area of the smaller rectangle to kind of dip in that area slightly. After molding the soap dish, when I'm satisfied with how it looks, I'll put it in the fridge for it to harden and become more solid. I'm moving on to the next step, which is making the soap and the sponge. So for the soap, I've got a piece of leftover cake here, and I'm going to cut out a rectangular piece of cake with a height of about 2 cm. Then using the same tin of sardine I used for the soap dish, I'm going to carve out the shape of the soap. On the other hand, I'll carve out the sponge from another rectangular piece of cake with a height slightly more than that of the soap at about 2.8 cm high. I'm also going to round off the corners and the edges of this piece of cake. Now, after carving the cakes, as you've probably guessed, it's now time to crumb coat and chill. That sounded kind of cool. Crumb coat and chill. I'm gonna crumb coat the 2 carved pieces of cake with buttercream, and I'll put them in the fridge to chill for 30 minutes after crumb coating. And over, you cry yourself to sleep, and you're colder, much colder. If only you could see. Don't you know that you're beautiful, just the way you are, just the way you came. Don't you know that you're beautiful, no matter what the For my soap, I'm using yellow modeling chocolate. So what I'm going to do now is to roll out this modeling chocolate. I try to roll out the modeling chocolate as thin as possible. Then I cut out a small square from the rolled out modeling chocolate, and now I'm going to pick it up and drape it over my soap cake. What I'm now going to do is to use a blunt fondant knife tool to tuck the modeling chocolate underneath the soap cake. Before cutting the excess modeling chocolate using the same tool. My soap looks bright and colorful, but also kind of plain. So what I'm going to do now is to add some design by branding it. So I'm using a C letter cutter to inscribe a C shape at the middle, and on top of that a flower shaped design using a flower cutter. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. The branding made the cake come to life, and as you can now see, it looks more like a real bar of soap. So I'm going to place it in my modeling chocolate soap dish. Wow, this is looking so real. I'm so excited. Now moving on, I'm going to cover the sponge cake with blue fondant. So first I'm rolling it out. Then I'll pick it up and drape it over the cake.
But I figured it's not on me. Yeah. The way you're making me shiver, your hands on myself, I keep pulling the trigger, alright. This very finger for people like them. Oh no.
Just like I did with the soap cake, I'm also going to use my fondant knife tool to tuck the fondant underneath the cake before cutting off the excess fondant. Now I'm going to poke holes randomly around the cake using a skewer. So I'll poke larger holes first, and then when I'm done, I'll poke smaller ones by inserting a very small portion of the skewer tip. After poking the holes, I'll rub my palms all over the surface to close up the holes just a little bit. The last item I made for this cake was a foot scrubbing brush. So I started out by first molding a rough shape of a brush using brown modeling chocolate. I had a template which I made by placing a real brush on cardboard and cutting out the shape. So placing this template on my brown modeling chocolate, I cut out the shape of a brush and created the holes for the bristles. Before I started making the holes for the bristles, I made a hole on the brush handle for the brush rope. Then I used the skewer to create holes for the bristles. At the start, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to use for the bristles to make the brush look realistic. I considered using fondant and even modeling chocolate, but I wasn't quite convinced that they would give me the look I was going for. So that was why I left making the brush for last, while I cracked my head about what best to use. Finally, it hit me. I remembered the edible pine leaves in my gift box cake. So I decided to follow a similar technique to make the brush bristles using edible wafer paper. You can check out the gift box cake video by clicking the link above. As you can see, I've already made and attached some of the bristles of the brush. I had some strips which I cut from white edible wafer paper, so I used the scissors to cut very thin needle-like strips from the side, stopping just before getting to the end. After cutting between 13 to 15 strips like this, I made the next cut to get to the end of the paper to give me smaller individual sections of these strips. I attached most of the bristles off camera to shorten the length of this video, but to do it, I lightly brushed some water to the uncut base of the wafer paper and then I wrapped the paper around itself. It's a bit difficult showing the wrapping process clearly while wrapping it. But after wrapping it, I held the base of the paper for a few seconds just to make sure it stuck together. Then I inserted the base into the holes for the bristles, pushing it further down using my skewer. Going through the process again, I have dabbed some water at the base of this wafer paper and I'm now wrapping it around, holding it for it to get stuck together, then inserting it into the hole for the bristle, pushing it down with my skewer. I'm going to do it one more time. So I've picked up my piece of wafer paper and then using a brush I'll apply a bit of water to the base. Then I'll wrap it around itself, hold it to make sure it's stuck, and then finally I will insert it into the hole made for the bristles, pushing it down with my skewer. To complete the brush, I made a rope by passing some creamish brown modeling chocolate through my fondant extruder, and then I passed this rope through the hole in the brush handle and tied both ends together. I thought of the best thing to use for my soap suds because I didn't want to go down the egg white route. So finally I decided to froth some milk by first whisking the milk until it formed some foam. Then I microwaved the milk for about 30 seconds to stabilize the foam and scooped some of it onto the soap cake. And this worked perfectly for me. And finally you have it. That's the finished cake. The items look so real that if I didn't make them myself, I would definitely be fooled into believing they were real. Now for the fun part, I'm going to cut the cake. So I'm starting with the brush. Then the sponge. And finally the soap. We've now come to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!